You don't know what he really looks like. But he's never that far away. Everything he needs is in his briefcase. He can deliver to wherever you are, and as soon as your back's turned, wham, he's poured in some more. You can trust him absolutely with your kids. They have a right to enjoy themselves too. Worried? No, really, it's fine. On the TV in his white coat, he's so reassuring. Well, we're exaggerating just a bit. When he tries to sway your parliamentarians, he doesn't hide his face. And he doesn't lurk in underground car parks. That was just to scare you. In fact, who is he? He is the sugar lobby. Maybe it's time to unmask him. Yes, sugar, never shy about making eyes at you on the TV. You remember this old ad? Sugar, ask me. I'm the expert. Remember him? The expert who would sell you all sorts of sweets. I was there. The never-ending dominoes. All shapes and sizes. Sugar is everywhere. Sugar, the smallest of our greatest pleasures. It's an unforgettable slogan. Ad campaigns paid for by the sugar industry to persuade you sugar is happiness. And it's been going on for 30 years. A short visit to the most recent agricultural fair and you'll see the little white cube carrying on again. Candy floss, cotton candy, the ads never stop. It's subtler these days. In 30 years, sugar's come a long way. A typical French family Sunday lunch, like in the movies.
Wow.
On the menu, fresh vegetables and steamed fish. But for dessert, well, that's where subliminal messages kick in. Anyway, she had me in her chocolate fondant. Yummy. Thanks to you, my life has so many flavors. I'm a happy prisoner, casualty of love. Prisoner, casualty. How true those ads are, because sugar is, in fact, a real drug. Researchers in Bordeaux, southern France, established the fact by sheer coincidence. Serge Ahmed is an expert on addiction. His lab rats weren't meant to be used for research into sugar. Their drug is a liquid form of cocaine. They are now all addicted in the name of scientific research. This syringe contains cocaine. One day, Serge Ahmed decided to alter his rats' breakfast by adding sugar water to their diet. In theory, a harmless and neutral substance that he thought would allow more accurate tests on addiction. The animal can choose between pressing a lever on the right or a lever on the left. He can either drink sugar water or, on the right, an intravenous infusion of cocaine straight into the bloodstream. In theory, the already addicted rats should have gone for the liquid cocaine on the right and not the sugar water. But, surprise, surprise, of every 100 rats we tested, more or less 80 to 90 turned from cocaine to sugar water. In other words, the vast majority. You see how the animal totally ignores us and is just focused on drinking the sugar water. And that's what he's actually doing right now, look. It's proof just how addicting and intense sugar water really is. Serge Ahmed was one of the first to establish sugar is as addicting as cocaine. It would later be confirmed by other scientists as well. His research showed that sugar deliciously titillated the reward and motivation neurons inside our brains. Sugar, exactly like drugs, releases dopamine into the body. Are all our children addicts? They consume an average of 100 grams of sugar a day, the equivalent of 20 small cubes. We might have been giving our kids a hard drug. Our attitude towards sugar resembles our attitude towards tobacco back in the 1960s. Then, no one spoke of tobacco addiction, and nicotine wasn't considered addictive. But that didn't stop millions of people being dependent on tobacco, with all the consequences we know all too well 50 years later.
Long
enough to enjoy a cigarette.
Are sugar and tobacco the same threat? Isn't our scientist friend exaggerating? Well, not really. We are now paying the cost. In France today, 19% of the population are obese, twice as many as in the year 2000. It's an epidemic and the victims are getting younger and younger. In this hospital in the south of France, a special unit treats adolescents suffering from obesity. 24 youngsters spend their school year here. 10 months during which they'll learn how to move again and, above all, how to eat properly.
Bon appétit!
Merci.
It's not a diet, just proper food. You have to eat your vegetables.
No.
And a bit of common sense, such as drinking water, not sodas. The results are encouraging. Since September, Romain has lost weight. But he won't say how much. He's 16 and quite lucid about what he thinks is a form of addiction. There are far less sweet things here. It's like a detox. Well, that's not exactly what's going on, but when we're trying to get off sugar. But we were so used to having it, and it became an essential part of our lives, eating sugar and sweets and things like that. Detox, almost like withdrawal. The doctor who checks up on Romain says changing one's diet is the only solution. They need to be taught a new diet and learn to change their habits, their lifestyles, if we want to put a stop to this silent epidemic. An epidemic that kills 1 million people a year across Europe. At the start of his career, Professor Philip James studied the effects of famine on children from the developing world and what could be done to fight against it. Ironically, today he's become one of the world's most respected specialists on obesity.
It's quite incredible. You just find it absolutely everywhere. And it's a brilliant manipulation of the system. Everywhere you go, there's nothing but rubbish being sold. And so it's no wonder everybody buys it. They do everything possible to make sure that you don't have just one Coke, but 3 Cokes a day if possible. And actually we know that for some children, they now have a quarter of their, or even a third of their total calories comes from sugar.
An orgy of calories from sugar that is found in almost all of today's foodstuffs. Aged 72, Professor James can remember a time when sugar was far less common.
In the old days, you used to add sugar to tea and coffee, but most of the sugar was going into cakes and so on. And then, after the war, they realized you could have sweets and confectionery, so you would take these between meals. When they did their taste panels, they found people liked things that were sweet. If they put sweet and fat things together, it was absolutely ideal. Add a bit more salt, and it was the explosive mixture that would appeal to everybody's palate and lit up, we now know, the pleasure centers of the brain. And we have been very bad as doctors and in nutrition to understand that the brain is not used to having lots of little meals, snacks, between meals.
To entice the customer and have him swallow anything and everything, so long as it was sugar, is why today it's found everywhere and in industrial amounts. But no longer just in white cubes. Each year, France alone consumes more than 1.5 million tons of sugar, of which half is in processed products. And not just in sweets either, it's in the ready-to-eat meals, soft drinks, and fruit juices, which is how the industry has slowly turned us into addicts. Doctors have been slow to react to the problem, but at least now there's some movement. In 1990, Professor James was the technical director in charge of nutrition at the World Health Organization. The organization asks him to set the minimum and maximum thresholds for various categories of foodstuffs. What Philip James publishes after his research doesn't meet with everyone's approval.
This caused a revolution, and that was seen to be dynamite. Why? Because I put in that you don't need any sugar at all.
Added sugar.
This is added sugar, free added sugar. So they went crazy.
So we don't really need any added sugar in what we eat. In 2003, Professor James produced another report, which didn't improve his popularity. In it, he established a direct link between obesity and the consumption of sugar. Until then, medical criticism of sugar was confined to the fact it wasn't good for one's teeth.
We realized that actually if you put sugar into food, your brain finds it difficult to understand the calories there, and so you start getting fatter. And in this report, we now had good enough evidence to say it's not just a question of teeth, but it's a question of obesity.
And it's a phenomenon scientists still don't completely understand. But they do know that our bodies find it difficult to say stop when it's already received enough calories, especially from sodas. Children are most at risk. According to the report, every can or additional glass of sweet drink they drink per day adds 60% to the risk of obesity. Obviously not something the soft drinks manufacturers want to hear.
That again led to a crisis. Why? Because the Secretary of State for Health in America came to WHO and told them that this was complete nonsense, and that Coca-Cola and soft drinks and sugar had nothing to do with any health problems. If you're in food, you're into big politics. Why? Because the biggest industry in the world is the food industry. And therefore, you automatically, if you come up against the food industry, they try to kill you.
It's an all-powerful lobby. Food processing is the largest industry in France. It's an economic heavyweight, with sugar holding pride of place. Beet producers to refiners and food industry giants, it's a business that brings in money. France is Europe's largest producer of sugar. The lobby's influence is all-pervasive, not least in the lower house of Parliament. Lobbyists influence parliamentarians by inviting them to conferences and lunches on the pretext of scientific information. We found one such invitation to a conference on diabetes, organized by Kraft Foods. The Kraft Food Group is, after Nestlé, the second largest food processing company in the world. Its turnover is close to 50 billion a year. Milka's Purple Cow, Carambar Sweets and Lou Biscuits are all part of the Kraft empire, as too are Oreo cookies, made up of 46% sugar, and they sell like hotcakes.
Whoa. Behold, the new triple double Oreo. Who's gonna race with that?
It's time to tag along to the diabetes conference. A basket is useful to scoop up samples of Kraft's sweetest products. Kraft was going to ask members of Parliament to attend, but when it knew the event was to be filmed, it was cancelled. Possibly to avoid being caught red-handed, trying to influence the nation's elected officials.
Rencontre scientifique, Kraft Food France Atelier. Bonjour.
When the talk here turns to health, the reference is to business rather than physical. Listen carefully. The man raising his hand is Kraft France's Director of Nutrition. Taste is a given. It's a must. The product has to be good to keep selling. There's also an element of convenience. The fact it's in individual sachets impacts on its saleability and also its ingredients. The whole grain cereals and the energy it gives you all morning. Those are the three key parameters that make this product sell. Energy in Kraft's language translates as sugar. The chat ends, and there's no way of knowing if earlier the talk was indeed of diabetes rather than business. One thing is certain, there are doctors in the audience. All right? What are you doing here? Oh, well, you see. It's Dr. Arnaud Kokol, a well-regarded medical nutritionist from the Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital in Paris. He's often seen on TV, talking about obesity. There are studies that show obese people consume less sugar than people who are not obese, so it's not necessarily to blame for it. Why are you interested in a conference about diabetes organized by one of the world's biggest food companies? That's a good question. Yes, indeed, it is a good question. Well, we have to talk. It's just some dialogues. Besides, I think the way big business works is interesting. Would you like an Oreo? It's my treat. No thanks. Why not? Well, I don't feel like one just now. I know there's a horn of plenty out there, but just taking one won't put you at risk. But you can see their interest, can't you? Do you understand why a large group that's called Kraft Food, that sells all these products, would be interested in organizing a conference on diabetes? Isn't it a bit like cigarette manufacturers organizing a conference on lung cancer? That could well be interesting if they organize a conference like that. But doesn't it shock you? Well, firstly, you can't compare tobacco with food. You need to eat to live. So things that are pleasurable are also found in food. I would rather people were educated about the choice of food and the frequency they eat and wrestle over what's banned. I have no interests in the food industry, and that's why I can talk freely about it. So there's no conflict of interest then? I've already been to several debates with Coca-Cola. I've been to a few of these things in the past. I wasn't directly paid by Coke or anything like that. What does not directly mean? It was through a PR agency. Coke has never directly paid me. Why, you had me worried. But you got paid anyway, didn't you? Yes, but it was just a blurb on how good sweet things taste. It was totally transparent. Well, you don't work for free just for the pleasure of it, do you? I could work for free. Why not? For the pleasure of it? Well, we're in a world where... you're a doctor, and the Hippocratic Oath. I already give enough free advice to my patients or give speeches for free to be able to say most of what I do is already like that. But I don't feel I'm being bought. I will say things... Well, look, I'm not here to tell you, you should buy chocolate and so on. If you present it that way on television, well, that's shocking, obviously, and people will be alarmed. But parents' kitchen cupboards are full of stuff like this. Yes, I know, it's dreadful. The number of families who have these kinds of biscuits, carambars, chocolate, if it was just that... Kraft's director of nutrition approaches. He is not happy about his products being criticized. Excuse me, but I'm going to have to ask you to stop, because the point of this was not to create a controversy. We're not being controversial, it's just news. No, you might be doing news, but today it's scientific news. Just scientific, and if you start coming up with... But the public's interested in this. The public isn't here today. They are, thanks to our cameras. Yes, but we didn't invite them. The audience is the scientific experts. You represent Kraft? Yes, I'm the director of nutrition at Kraft. Okay, great, nice to meet you. Hello. No. Hello, but stop now, because we have a schedule to stick to today. 41% sugar, 48 there, 49% here, 60% there. How can Kraft sell such products? As a mother, I now look very carefully at the details on the side of the products, and I get worried when I see this. And you're now holding a conference on diabetes? You're demonizing our products. That's not what we're here for today. It was going so well. The fact the public's here now, doesn't that make things even better for you? The public isn't here, because you're confusing the issues and you're twisting it round to your advantage. Well, we don't have an axe to grind, we just want information. Yes, you do have an agenda, you're mixing topics, and that shouldn't be mixed. Okay, we're going. It's all very tense. No one wanted our biscuits. Just a reminder that this wasn't a conference on some sensitive issue, such as nuclear weapons. This was a conference on diabetes, organized by Kraft. To recap, to influence the lower house of Parliament, one must be credible. A company like Kraft Foods has close ties with medical nutritionists. With this sort of scientific credibility, it makes it easier to get the attention of MPs and to hope for favourable legislation. Since it's always easier to get things done oneself, the sugar industry in France took matters into its own hands a long time ago. CEDUS, the Centre for Research on Sugar, is in some ways their armed wing. The title sounds innocent enough, a statistical institute of some sort, but in reality it groups together the whole sugar industry, from sugarcane and beet producers to refiners. Under the guise of learning about cooking, the sugar lobby penetrated French classrooms more than 20 years ago, thanks to the so-called Semaine du Goût, or Fresh Flavors Week. What are you doing at my school? This week I'll teach you how food should really taste. With sugar, celebrate the real flavor. Every October, some of the country's top chefs spend a few days in school teaching 150,000 pupils. But the Fresh Flavors Week is also a chance for the sugar community to insinuate itself into the proceedings. In a chic district of Paris, CEDUS is organizing an educational meeting on sugar. Inside, a mix of elegant ladies, high school students, and some journalists who've come to listen to what CEDUS has to say. The man at the mic is Philippe Reiser, CEDUS's scientific director. The image that we have of sugar is an ambivalent one that swings between desire and guilt in taking such pleasure from it. Sugar supplies energy. Sugar is good for the morale, but the argument against it is that it makes you gain weight. Sugar would be so good if only it didn't make you fat. But happily, CEDUS is there to reassure us all. Whether there's a scientific link between sugar consumption and health problems was the subject of a recent report by the EFSA, the European Food Safety Agency, which concluded there was no recognized connection between the current rate of sugar consumption and weight gain, cancer, diabetes, or cardiovascular illnesses. No link between sugar and obesity? Is this really what he said? This is something that needs following up with Mr. Reiser. You still claim there's no link between sugar consumption and obesity? Well, based on what I've just presented, one of the conclusions, which you can find on the internet, of the EFSA report on glucids or sugar, is, in and of itself, cannot be linked with gaining weight. He insists there is no connection between sugar and obesity. That goes against just about everything covered in this documentary so far. But it's the sugar lobby speaking, so it should be taken with a pinch of, well, sugar. The study he mentioned was published in 2010, and here it is. It states, studies do not show a positive correlation between total sugar intake and obesity, rather the opposite. The study was published in 2010 by the European Food Safety Agency, the ultimate reference in Europe. It checks virtually everything that ends up in your dinner plate and is the sanitary authority for the whole continent. From its brand new headquarters in Parma, Italy, its mission is to provide independent scientific advice. Albert Flynn is the president of the scientific group on nutrition. He supervised the 2010 study, and he's agreed to be interviewed. Surprisingly, his conclusions differ somewhat from those of the French sugar lobby.
There are always doubts about this evidence. In other areas, the evidence can be quite strong, but in some areas, the evidence is still under development in the scientific research. So when you put all the research studies together, it can be quite difficult to get a very clear answer, especially on the topic of obesity. It's quite a difficult subject to get clear answers.
Obesity is more complicated than it seems. Where does all the scientific data Professor Flynn refers to come from? For example, the paragraph about there being no link between sugar and obesity. The scientists used 4 studies as references, but who paid for them?
I don't know who financed the studies. We read the studies that were published in the peer-reviewed journals, but who financed them wasn't the issue.
The professor seems unconcerned, or at least untalkative, because at least 2 of the 4 studies were paid for by the sugar industry. Yes, indeed, it's written there and there. And the big companies generously agreed to feed the guinea pigs Mars bars and Coca-Cola in the name of science. If we had dirty minds, we'd think that was the reason the scientists found it hard to make the connection between sugar and obesity. Or even that the EFSA experts were not quite as independent as all that. At least that's what this video posted on the internet claims. Several people at EFSA have ties to the food industry. Some of them once worked for the food industry itself, or even while they were already at EFSA. The real question is, wouldn't it be better if our food was examined by truly independent scientists who produce truly independent studies? What do you think? That's indeed the question. In Brussels, the NGO that produced the video keeps an eye on the lobbyists. It's called CEO, the Corporate Europe Observatory. David Lalou has studied the EFSA for years. He's taken a close look at the interests of those nutritional experts who have written, among other things, there was no correlation between obesity and sugar. One of them is French.
Vous avez par exemple
Here, for example, is Ambroise Martin. He was a member of the French Institute for Nutrition for 6 years. He was in administration, and it's an industry lobby group in France that includes universities and also scientists from Danone, Nestlé, Yoplait, and so on. He consulted for Lesieur, Danone, NutriChoice. Apparently, he was given an award for his work on nutrition. By who? By the sugar lobby. It's a bit strange. Here's a professor who is on the scientific committee of the EFSA that gives its opinion on the links between sugar consumption and obesity. Yet 3 years before, he received an award from the French sugar industry. Ambroise Martin answers questions on the phone about the award he received from CEDUS. At your level of seniority, is it usual to receive awards or money from the sugar lobby, which is what CEDUS is, for your advice? We're just people. You can see what I was given back then. It was more a recognition, no doubt from my friends, who'd sold out to the industry and who were on the jury for the prize. But you could have refused it if you considered yourself not to have sold out to the industry. Of course I could have refused it, that's quite right. How much was the award worth? 5,000 euros. But it's totally wrong to think you can secretly manipulate someone to favor sweet drinks with 5,000 euros. Oh yes, a scientist cannot be bought. At least not for 5,000 euros. Ambroise Martin is not the only one to have close ties with the sugar industry. Far from it. Out of the 21 nutrition experts at the EFSA, 13 have declared interests in the food industry. The declarations of interests often include the same brands: Nestlé, Danone, Coca-Cola, Ferrero, and Kellogg's. Starting with the head of the nutritional experts at the EFSA, that's right, our old friend Professor Flynn. The guy that's interesting is Albert Flynn. He's on Kraft's Scientific Advisory Board. The company is one of the largest multinationals in the world, along with Nestlé and Unilever. For Danone, Kellogg's, and Master Foods, which makes the Mars chocolate bar, he is paid for his research. It's money for research as far as the multinationals are concerned. You're talking about the president of the nutrition group at the European Food Safety Agency? Yes. Scary, isn't it? Scary? Maybe not, but it's definitely food for thought. In Parma, Professor Flynn readily admits his very close ties with Kraft, the makers of Oreo and Milka chocolate.
You have been on scientific advisory from Kraft?
Yes.
From 2003, right?
That's correct, yes.
Till today?
Yes, till today, yes. My expertise in particular would relate to the fortification of foods. That's one of the areas where I do research, so that would be the area where I would provide advice.
How much money do you earn for this advice per year?
They give me an honorarium, but that's private.
You won't let us know what...
No, that my income is private, yes.
Like Albert Flynn, the scientists that work for the EFSA are all specialists in their fields. The trouble is that EFSA only pays their expenses. They receive no salary. Any overtures from the food industry are very tempting. Under criticism, the management of the EFSA is now finally trying to clean up its act.
If you are a member of a board outside EFSA, which has a overlap in interests with EFSA's interests, especially if those interests are linked with industry, it would not be possible to be chair in such a case. And this is clear for everyone.
This is what will change starting July 1st, right?
Exactly.
The new rules come into effect in July 2013. It's a little late as far as this documentary goes. It's now been 2 years that EFSA has been used by the sugar lobby as an unparalleled weapon. So this is where matters stand. EFSA, the European Food Safety Agency, depends on the advice of its scientists, but more than half of them have ties to the food industry, which in turn depends on the EFSA's allegedly independent studies to defend its own interests. It's worth knowing that it's not enough to have science on your side, which goes some way to showing how journalists, even without realizing it, can also be used to spread the message to, well, you, the viewer. Firstly, the industry is to find a reliable public partner, above all suspicion, and with a reputation for independence, which is exactly what a soda salesman decided to do a few years ago. Do you remember this sort of conversation, which began back in 2008? Tell me what you drink, and I'll tell you who you are. What do the French drink? It's what Cradock asked in a recent poll held between 2003 and 2007. The results were presented to the Bichat Hospital in Paris. And surprise, the French don't drink enough. Water, of course. The AFP news agency sent out a report on the findings, and it becomes a major talking point. In the media, the message is repeated non-stop, and little by little, it ends up becoming the French don't drink enough. Full stop. What is implied is not enough water, but also not enough soft drinks either. The organization behind the message is the Life Study and Observation Research Center, or CREDOC. It's a body that's run by the Finance Ministry and subsidized by the taxpayer. It's serious, impartial, and independent. That's according to its website. CREDOC are the best people to turn to know what France is eating or drinking. It concludes quite impartially that one must drink more, including sodas that won't make you fat, as CREDOC is quite reassuring about the link between sugar and obesity. In black and white, it states there is no correlation between refreshing, non-alcoholic soft drinks and weight. It's a message that gets through, as this newspaper article proves. A study that will stop many feeling guilty. Good news that contradicts scientific findings on the very same subject. Remember Professor James's controversial 2003 report to the World Health Organization, in which he states that drinking 1 can of soda every day will increase the risk of obesity by 60%? So who is telling the truth? Now, one small detail to add. The CREDOC study was commissioned by Coca-Cola, which the media failed to mention. An interview with Coca-Cola would have been great, but requests were never answered. Instead, over to Credoc to meet the person responsible for the study, Pascal Hebel, a senior statistician.
Pascal Hebel, Credoc, top première.
I found this article, which appeared in the François newspaper in March 2008. At the end here, there's a short phrase. It says that there's no connection between soft drinks or sodas and weight gain. A study that will stop many feeling guilty, as the journalist says at the very end. The reason he wrote that is because Credoc, you, published a study on the subject called What Do the French Drink? We looked for the study on the internet and on your own website, and we couldn't find it anywhere. We rang and asked Credoc to send us a copy, but we never got one. But we did finally track down one copy, and here it is. Is it because it was paid for by Coca-Cola that you didn't want us to have it? No, it's just that when we're working... In fact, it wasn't a study that was paid for by Coca-Cola. It's an investigation financed by... hang on, why is their logo there? They were working on something. And it only means... But they financed part of the study. Yes, they paid for it and they published it. So Coca-Cola did finance it then. No, let me tell you what happened exactly. It was an investigation, and I'll show you as a report like this one. But this part was about the drinks. They paid some of it so they could use it. All right, but you have to admit, it's shocking that Coca-Cola finances part of Credoc's studies. No, when it comes to soft drinks, I have Danone, Nestlé, all the major players. But these private companies help finance Credoc's studies. Isn't that wrong? I'm in business here. You know how it works. We're an association, and we sell our research studies. Well, hang on, 2/3 of it is public money. Are you joking? It's 10%. We can call the director if you like. It's 10% of Credoc's finances that are subsidized. So you say, fine, there's no link between the consumption of soft drinks and it's a statistical connection. I'm saying there's no statistical connection. Are you changing your mind about it? No, that's what we studied. That's what it showed. There's no statistical link. In case you haven't understood, here it is again. As far as Credoc is concerned, statistics do not show there's a link between sweet, soft drinks and obesity. Despite the frequent research on the same topic, including medical research, starting with that of the French Food Safety Agency in 2004. Let's take the EFSA report, and the French Food Safety Agency's is about something else entirely. Too much sugar, particularly by way of soft drinks or sodas, of course, would have a definite correlation with children and adolescents becoming overweight or obese. But you agree it's not the same thing. When one is a scientist, it doesn't mean it's the same result. I take the average of the population, so I haven't factored in an individual who consumes excessively. So medically, they're right. It's statistics. There are different tools. There also has to be several factors. In research, there needs to be various different studies that give the same results before you can get a consensus. And since you want several kinds of studies, there's the EFSA and the Lancet too. In fact, in another study published by the prestigious medical journal The Lancet in 2001, it concluded that infant obesity is tied in with the consumption of soft drinks. Isn't the Lancet serious? Yes, but it's not about France. Oh, right. So the effects on people who drink sodas in Britain wouldn't be the same as those that drink sodas in France? Is there a special kind of soda in Britain? I can tell you that France is the country where people drink less soda, okay? Yes, but that's not what we're talking about. Is there a link? Don't ask me that. I'm not a physiologist. I deal in studies, okay? I can't tell you about anything about the cause and effect. Well, it's what you've written about. No, that's not true. That's not what we wrote. There is no statistical evidence. There's no correlation with the consumption of non-alcoholic soft drinks? Well, that's the statistical term for it. In the data, there's no connection. Correlation means connection, agreed? I'm saying there is no statistical correlation, okay? Didn't you use the word statistic in your sentence? Yes, and do you know any other meaning to the word correlation? What bothers me is that this, in medical terms, is very serious. I'm a parent and I read this and I think, wow. And when I read your study again, I don't say, wow. And when I see that the study is partly financed by Coca-Cola, I tell myself there has to be something fishy going on, since I guess I'm naturally suspicious. Why is it the same companies are always identified when I could bring up all the other products that are never mentioned? I could tell you that drinking wine has even more impact. Why don't you want to talk about Coca-Cola? Wine, water, Danone, whatever, but this is about Coca-Cola. But there are the links where there is statistical evidence and which we never talk about. It's just better to make believe there's a bad guy out there. But obesity is very complex. It's just too easy to say that this is someone else's fault. Anyway, we never say there's a bad guy. You might think he's not a baddie at all. Well, I can tell you I've done hundreds of them, and there are studies, other studies like this. I can tell you I've done one on stewed fruit, but you wouldn't be interested. And it was the same thing to say you should eat more stewed fruits. But that's of no interest, is it? Because it's about fruit. So who paid for that study? The Apple Growers Union, Epidemic. The same people, in fact. That's it. I've said my piece. The Epidemic Stewed Fruit Union, as well as Coca-Cola and so many other famous brands, do all finance at least part of the CREDOC studies, an organization that's meant to provide independent and reliable statistics, which occasionally the press picks up on without checking, and that the same brands use to sell even more of their products. To the industrialists, obesity is the fault of the consumer, not of their products. It's up to the individual whether they eat too much fat or sugar on a regular basis. To know how much sugar we put in our shopping trolleys, however, means knowing how to decipher the labels, the tables, and sometimes even the pictograms. Put on your glasses and revise the rule of 3, because it's difficult to make it any more complicated. You'd think it's done on purpose. You know what? It is done on purpose. Because there almost was a much simpler system, as in this promotional video made by an association that protects European consumers.
The British came up with a very good idea. Take a well-known and easy-to-understand symbol and use it on food packages to mark the levels of key nutrients. Red is for high levels, amber for medium levels, and green for low levels.
It's simple indeed, a form of labeling with the traffic light colors as when you're driving: green, orange, red, to give not just levels of sugar but also fats and salt. The system has been successfully used for 6 years in Britain. It's easier to understand. According to an independent Australian study, consumers are 5 times more likely to choose healthy products using this tri-colored system. At Grenoble University, one researcher has even proved that with the traffic light system, daily consumption of sugar decreases by 19%. The system would be easy to adapt to the labels of some famous products, for example, Nutella. Nutella contains only natural and healthy ingredients without coloring or preservatives. You would know straight away it was too fatty and too sweet. David Leloup, of the European NGO that monitors the lobby groups in Brussels, has redesigned a jar using the 3 colors. This is a red sticker for sugar, a red sticker for fats, and a green sticker for salt, of course. Of course, with a new sticker, the commercials would have to be less popular. If on the same shelf you had another spreadable product with an orange color, a green color, and a green color, the choice would be easy. You can see them immediately that way. On the front of the product, yes, immediately. It's what the European Commission had asked for, but the food lobby torpedoed it. Food labeling was the subject of a ferocious battle in the European Parliament in 2010. To the MEPs, it was the greatest lobbying operation they'd ever witnessed. The British MEP Glenys Wilmot was in the front line, but on the side of the losers. She'd seen the tricolour system work in her own country, which is why, with other elected officials, she supported the ruling, making it a system of reference throughout the EU. That was without taking the lobbies that are everywhere in Brussels into account, such as the natural gas lobbyists squatting in the hall waiting to spread the good word on energy to the MEPs. There are representatives from Shell, Total and BP. If any European MP is peckish, the buffet is all set. Glenys Wilmot has already eaten, and besides, the English MEP is fed up with being wooed.
This stands and something every day in a place.
Yes, yes.
Where it takes place, the lobby, in some meetings, informal meetings.
Informal meetings, meetings coming to your office. There is nothing wrong with lobbying. You do have to hear everybody's point of view. It's the amount and the amount of pressure that is placed on people that's wrong.
And for the three colours, the pressure was immense.
It was totally unprecedented. It was an enormous amount of emails, phone calls, letters, people knocking on our doors asking for meetings, and people putting out misinformation and sending voting lists through, all of that sort of thing. We don't usually have that intensity of lobbying.
Among the thousands of emails sent to persuade her, many had been sent by the European Food Association, that includes all the sector's major brands. Amendment by amendment, they tell the MEPs how to vote for or against. But Glenys Wilmot also received instructions on how to vote directly from companies such as Nestlé. Nestlé France is formally opposed to the tricolour labelling system, which leads to an arbitrary judgment on the food product.
We even had voting lists that were put on the desk in the committee, so that when we got to our desk just before the vote, there was a voting list there from certain organisations as well. So people saw the voting list and thought it was, you know, it was a voting list perhaps from the committee, until they read it and realised it was actually from an industry organisation.
Why are they so against the three-colour system? What the industrialists fear most is being stigmatised. Once their products have been branded red, the customer will likely be scared off and sales will plummet. In a former chocolate factory in a suburb in the east of Paris is one of the tricolour system's bitterest enemies, Nestlé, the world's largest food company. The man surrounded by dozens of Nestlé products is Jérôme François, who's in charge of the company's consumer service. A red light means stop. Danger, don't go further. So don't eat anything on this shelf, because this shelf is the red light. We think it's wrong to condemn the entire category with a symbol, like a red mark, a red light. Two categories of products, chocolates and cereals, posed a problem for the company. All the cereals would be orange, all the chocolates red, and all the coffees green. Is that really any help to me? If there's a red light, that means be careful. Avoid these. Nestlé's chocolate or ice creams and other products, even those not produced by Nestlé. We don't believe that certain categories of foodstuffs should be entirely eliminated. That's what's unacceptable, especially in the French culture, where we're not ready yet to give up certain sweets. They're part of our heritage. Oh, yes, indeed. France's proud culinary heritage, Kit Kat, Crunch, Chocopic, and so on are all worth defending. To fight the traffic light colours, the business needed to come up with an alternative.
Has to equal 0, A plus, B plus C. In the study of matrix algebra,
Since 2007, they're developing a rival system, which, according to them, is far superior. The great innovation with which these large corporations are so confident are these small figures with percentages, which have already adorned their products on the shelves. Nestlé was one of the first to use them, apparently to make our lives easier. Let's take a look at one of Nestlé's flagship products. It says 11 grams of sugar or 12%. But 12% of what? How much sugar is there in this packet of Chocopic? 12% of what is referenced as needed daily. Which means that a bowl of Chocopic cereals has 12% of the sugar recommended per person per day. it doesn't mean the cereals are made up of 12% sugar. Because in fact, there's a lot more sugar than that in the cereals. For every 100 grams of Choco-Peak, how many grams of sugar is there? 37%. 37% sugar. Yes. So why not just put 30% sugar so we know that Crunch, Choco-Peak and all the others don't have 12% of the daily dose, but 37% of sugar for every 100 grams? What's important is not the contents in 100 grams, but what I'll be consuming with my bowl of cereal, and what it means as far as my daily intake is concerned. So we know a bowl is 12%. And if I have two, say at breakfast, and then one in the afternoon, that would be 24%. I then have to balance the rest of that day's sugar consumption not to exceed 100%. That's why it's like that. What it really means is you need to revise your rule of 3. And even that may not be enough, because all the nutritional information found on the packet is valid for adults, not for children. The average consumption for an adult is about 2,000 calories a day. So the figures refer to an adult's daily diet then? Well, that depends. But the packet refers to an adult's daily calorie intake. Yes, you have to choose though. If we wanted to put several age spans, there wouldn't be room. No, but you know this is a product for children. You could put that sort of information for kids on the front, surely. Well, there has to be a norm. If we took a child of 14, then people would say it's complicated. Because they have kids who are 10 years old. We'd need to list all sorts of ages. This way, at least, there's a reference which is for 2,000 calories, which is also good because it's a nice round number. If we took the calories for a 10-year-old, it would be 1,430, so the rule of 3 would be harder. That's another advantage of 2,000. Well, that's as clear as a bowl of chocolate cereal. If you want to check your daily intake of sugar, you'd better start using a calculator at breakfast time. It's the system the food industry wants to make the European MPs swallow. All it takes are the necessary means, and a lot of them. According to the NGOs, the food industry has shelled out €1 billion. An estimate based on figures from the European Agroalimentary Union. The agro-industrial lobby has spent more than €1 billion to develop its own labelling system in black and white based on percentages of the recommended daily intakes. So €1 billion just for that. To develop it, to test it, to advertise it, and to stop the traffic light-coloured system. On the 15th of March 2010, Glenis Willmott and other Food Safety Commission MEPs debated one last time the question of labelling before voting on the issue. The choice between the 3 colours and the industry's systems. The British MEP favoured the tricolour option to the bitter end.
There's been a huge lobby from the industry, massive lobby. People have even been taken out for meals and all sorts of things. And I would just say to colleagues, when you make your decisions on this information, please think carefully. Is it just the industry lobby you're listening to, or is it really the information that is the information that should be asked for by consumers? Then we should be listening to them and not just to the industry lobby. Thank you.
In the same room the following day, the chairman of the meeting asks for the MEPs to make up their minds. It's time to vote after 18 months of lobbying. Next is item 11, which is about the information for consumers on foodstuffs. Item 439 is an open vote. 30 in favour and 30 against with 2 abstentions. The proposal is rejected. So, by just 2 votes, the 3-colour system has been rejected, to the obvious delight of the food lobby. Essentially, the story of the sugar lobby is similar to that of tobacco. As in the past, with cigarettes, sugar makes use of massive advertising. There are ways in everywhere. A whole network patiently built up by its lobbyists. From the tenderest age, from school via City Hall's health programs, financed by the industry itself. Scientists and doctors have been paid to hold back some information, among them the foremost authorities, both national and European. And that's how the sugar industry, like the tobacco industry before it, has successfully penetrated our institutions and borne down heavily to impose its own laws.